Yeah.
Very cool. Well, it's wonderful to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting
You
into the
too.
game and your history and music. So thank you for taking a minute out.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for asking.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you bet.
it.
You bet. Before we get into the album, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic began. It threw all of us into kind of this unknown. And now that we're out of it, how much of living through that time period has influenced you as an artist and what you do today?
Well, I just came back from living in the Middle East in 2018.
Yeah.
I'd been in Dubai for 10 years and I'd only been back a year or so when the pandemic hit. And I basically, as all the musicians, I did a gig in London on the Sunday, and then on the Thursday, everything shut. So bizarrely, I actually went and retrained as an EMT and worked on the frontline ambulance through the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did that do for you? I mean, how did that lend to your artistry and who you are?
Well, I've always, as a musician, I've always done other things, not necessarily professionally always, but I've always had interests outside music. And I just think it enriches you as an artist. Yeah. It just enriches your perspective. And especially during the COVID, there were two ways to approach it. There was kind of sit around and wait for it to pass and struggle with the financial aspect, and mentally kind of, there was a lot of people, especially in the jazz world, musicians can often be quite left field in the way they think and feel, as we know, very creative. And there were quite a few strange opinions about what was going on and things like that. And I just thought, right, okay, I can either go down the route of falling into that mindset, or what can I do that's useful, productive, enriching, and can possibly financially help.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I went out and I worked on a frontline ambulance, which I was still doing actually until August. I've just had an accident. I've badly damaged my wrist. At the moment, I've had to have horrible surgery on it, and I haven't been able to work on the ambulance. But I do fully, assuming everything goes right with my wrist, intend to go back and keep doing some shifts doing it.
So yeah. I didn't realize this. I listened to an interview with David Lee Roth, and after he was done with Van Halen, he was an EMT in New York City.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like, no one. Can you imagine getting wheeled into there and David Lee Roth is like,
crazy.
His hair's spilling into your face.
Crazy. Well, Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
His wife is a police officer over here, voluntary.
Interesting. Wow. That's
so
cool.
That's quite interesting, getting arrested by Rod Stewart's wife. That's quite funny, isn't it? Supermodel.
Then you got song lyrics going through your head, so.
I just think, if you're in the creative arts and you work with people, it's all working with people. It's all managing people and connecting. And when I have in the past done medical stuff, I have some, I did a degree in nutrition and medicine. I've always had the health and medicine side to my character, but it was like, when you sit down and when you have to look at your musical career, and there is no musical career and it's out of your hands kind of thing. And there is no, in the UK, I would say the industry is just recovering. It's not like some industries that just switch straight back on.
Yeah.
Because our industry, although venues reopened, the public confidence and the spending habits and the way people socialize changed, because people learned to socialize at home and do their own thing a bit more. They didn't rely on going out. Yeah. So there's been a heck of a change. A lot of clubs haven't made it through.
Yeah.
So there was no guarantee that it was all going to just switch back on.
Yeah.
And I sat down and just sort of quantified my skill set, and it was, communication was key, obviously.
Sure.
And, performing well under pressure and all these things, and they're all quite transferable. When you look at them, they actually are transferable skills.
Yeah.
And I transferred them to emergency medicine, and and hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be back to it later in the year.
Yeah.
Just once, or even if it's just once a week. But I drive on blue lights. I'm an advanced driver as a consequence. And I got all my qualifications paid for by the government because I was able to do that. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's
you
get
know.
into the game. Let's get into the new
Mm,
album. Talk to me a little
mm.
bit about what your vision was and how you feel about it.
Basically, having come back from Dubai, prior to that, I'd lived in London for 20 odd years. And I came back and I relocated outside the capital city. And all my musical contacts were London based, and I'm not. And I was thinking it would be great to try and connect with some musicians who aren't based in London. And obviously, no disrespect to people, but the great musicians are in the capital cities.
Yeah.
And I was a bit, how am I going to find musicians of that kind of caliber? And I thought, well, there must be people a bit like myself who've done the London thing, who just don't live there anymore. So it took alongside this pandemic, it took all this time to find these guys, and they've all got the credentials of having played in London or connected and worked with various names, and they're great musicians, and they've got the great attitude, the professional attitude that I like to have, which I find is difficult when you're working with more provincial musicians who do it for a hobby. It's not the same focus. So we kind of connected and started playing together. And I've always written, and I was writing with my bass player. We were doing a lot of house music because I do a lot of house stuff as well, dance music. And it just organically felt right to do something. And I was aware of coming back to the UK. I needed to relaunch my presence here. And I thought an album needs to be done, especially now everything is much more digital based. It's much more social media. It's expected. It's not quite just, you can't just live off the gigs like you used to.
Yeah.
And so we did that and said, let's do something. And we all got together, and I'm quite organic with music. I don't really have a specific idea. I think it's just important to see what happens with jazz. And I didn't want to do an album of obvious standards, because what's the point? Everyone does it. My peers have done it. And however, I'd waited all this time to do it. I just thought I think you have to be a bit older, a bit more mature to be able to sing the blues properly, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think sometimes there's certain things where you have to be alive on this planet long enough,
Hmm.
you
You
know.
can learn that. You can learn the inflections. You can learn the runs. You can learn the delivery. But to really sing jazz properly, which is to me is very rooted in blues and spiritual music, New Orleans, and I used to sing Dixieland, trad, all those things. I think you have to have been around, and I wanted to do something that felt authentic.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
take me back to your beginnings. How did this journey into the music and jazz and soul, how did all of this kind of become who you are?
my mother is a well, she was a jazz pianist and double bassist, and she had a seven-piece New Orleans band, sort of amateur band. And my sisters and I, we used to get involved, walking around, leading the Bourbon Street Parade and things like that with the umbrellas, parties and things that they did, just kind of getting involved. And there was a youth jazz orchestra in this country. I don't know if you know of the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. You may do.
Yeah.
It's where I met Amy Winehouse. It's one of those kind of educational scenarios. It was set up by John Dankworth and Cleo Lane many years
Okay.
ago,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they have satellite bands around the country. And there was one local to the city I'm from, Derby, and my one of my sisters was playing alto sax in that band, and I went and said, "Do you want to sing?" And they sort of said, "Well, why not have a go?" And I had a go. Excuse me. And I did big band for the first 5 years. All I did was semi-professional big band material, all the Count Basie stuff, all the Benny Goodman, the Glenn Miller, all that. And then alongside that, obviously, came Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra. And at the same time, I was listening to 78s of Bessie Smith and Vic Spiderbeck and a lot of the old New Orleans stuff on 78s at home, just learning, and just
Yeah.
went round sitting in with I used to turn up and say, find a little jazz group and say, can I sit in? And they say, oh, we don't play Kylie Minogue songs. And I'm talking about Kylie Minogue first time round. And I'd say, no, I can sing the Basin Street Blues or St. Louis Blues. So I would. Then they'd ask me to go back, and I'd go back, and then they'd get a gig and I'd get £20. It just grew. Did it the old
Yeah.
fashioned way, just turning up, I'm doing it.
Yeah. So what was What was the first stage that you played on? I mean, you've been at Ronnie Scott's, you've been to a lot of hallowed stages. What was the
Mm.
first stage you played on where you were like, I can't believe this is happening?
There's been probably half a dozen of those moments in different genres of music
Yeah.
because I was with us three for a long time
Yeah.
get toured. And I remember once being on a mountain in Switzerland, which and doing a huge festival opposite the Prodigy to
Wow.
60,000 people. And you're like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Same with the Spice Girls, loads of
Uh-huh.
screaming kids, 20,000 screaming kids. So there've been those experiences. But I think from my own experiences, I mean, Ronnie Scott's my first time at Ronnie Scott's. The old stage at Ronnie Scott's used to have two things. It had a hole in the middle where your heel would always go, and a white taped cross, which was where the singer stood.
Yeah.
And I had to stand on that. And the moment of all the feet that have stood on this.
Yeah.
And this was the original before it was re sort of done. This was in the mid 90s, late 90s. And you're thinking there's a lot of feet stood on this particular spot.
Yeah.
And you feel the weight of that. And also there used to be a 6 night show, a 6 night run, and there was no talking, there was none of this. And, you know, you are literally exposed, and there was a lot of people come and write about you and all these things. So, but it took me 19 years to get that gig.
Wow.
It wasn't. It was an aspirational venue, which I think it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
606 Club, the same. I was playing there a lot before then. Probably took me more like 10 years to get to the 606. But Ronnie Scott's, yeah, it took a lot of work, and it was, it's changed now. It's quite different, but those days, and my first week there was opposite Bob Shepherd.
Yeah.
Then I did a week opposite Monty Alexander.
Wow.
Um, and Lewis Hayes was fantastic. He was
Yeah.
obviously Prince's uncle. And then my final week, when the final week-long residency I did there was opposite the Yellow Jackets.
Wow.
So you'd learn a lot while you were there, because you were there
Yeah.
for 6 nights with opposite these people, and you got to hear them and mix with them and just be inspired and have 6 nights to practice your shit. By the end of the week, you're kind of
Yeah.
like really tight.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of learning, Jamiroquai is somebody that you perform with.
I
Um,
haven't performed with them. I don't share, not in a sharing the stage. We've toured alongside.
I got you. Okay. So I guess and that's kind of what I noticed too, that you were performing in the kind of the same venues, so to speak.
Yeah.
What have you learned from a lot of these kind of big shots, legends, luminaries that you in turn try to teach young musicians you get around?
I think, first of all, humility.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest lessons that I think I could ever teach as a singer is that you are part of a band. It's a joint, it's a joint production. I've never been a singer who's had my band. I share the stage with musicians, and we between us create something.
Yeah.
And I think, one of my people used to say to me, what would you love somebody to say about you? And I'd say that they felt that I was one of them, because some singers can be othered from the band. They can be the star. They can be the ones who have, oh yeah, I have the band. And I remember seeing something happen very early on where I saw a 20-piece big band change key on a singer to teach her a lesson. And I saw them do it. And I remember, you just think, because she was out being a bit of being egotistical and diva, and these guys just decided amongst themselves they'd had enough. And when 20 people do it, the audience assume you're the one that's wrong. And I learned that, and I think that's what you learn. And the great musicians I've met, I had once had a night hanging out with Prince, bizarrely, and his band they came and jammed with it at a jam venue I was at. And I was speaking with Larry Graham and people like that, serious, big name guys. And they just are like we are. They're all the same. They're musicians first and foremost, and they're stars second. And I think that is the key. If you're the star trying to then use music as your vehicle towards celebrity and towards stardom,
Yeah.
it's not for me. It's
Yeah.
the other way around.
So what is it that gets you up every day? What do you love the best about being a singer and being a part of the musical tapestry?
I can wear what I like.
There you go.
Doesn't
Stop
matter what my
there.
hair looks, what I do to my hair, because I'm massively creative with my hair. And bearing in mind, my other job is in a uniform, and it's in a uniform because I don't own any clothes that I can't wear either to go to the gym or to go on stage. I don't have the in between office type clothes, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I love the freedom of expression. I love the fact that I can, I don't do set lists. I don't pre-plan. I literally go with the flow with my band, and I like that. I like living my life my way
Yeah.
and being free to do that. I
Yeah.
think that really is the main thing for me. And music obviously saved me, and it's always been there. Like when I hurt my arm, thank God I'm not a guitarist or a drummer. I go
Yeah.
back to singing, and it's been there forever.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm grateful to have that. But it's hard work. It's not luck, you know.
Yeah.
People think that, oh, you're so lucky to do it. I'm like, well, really, if I hadn't got music, I probably would have kids. I wouldn't have had two marriages disappear. I would have had my own property, all the things that regular life brings. But the
Yeah.
places I've been, I've never spent any money to travel. I travel for free.
Yeah.
I've seen places, and I go to venues and experience situations that I would never normally choose to go into. And
Yeah.
music, jazz especially, takes you there. Jazz is
Yeah.
can be very high end at times, and you can see and be around situations that you would never probably afford to do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of performance, take me back to the very first show that you saw live that blew you away, that made you think, I want to do that one day.
Tina Turner,
Wow.
and she was supported by Robert Cray,
Wow.
who was also fantastic. And he had the hit out at the time about the shotgun or the gun. I can't remember the name of it, the song, but it was involving somebody shooting somebody. It was in the charts in England. I went to see Tina Turner. It would have been 1987, I think.
Yeah.
And then there is a really weird story, because I remember going to see Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard, and she was playing a singer called Rachel.
Yeah.
And I came away thinking, you know what, this is a sign. And I was very inspired by Narada Michael Walden, who was involved with that film,
Yeah.
who I then met bizarrely at a gig in 1998, and we wrote a song together in the UK and things like that. So there's been all these funny little things that come along that just
Yeah.
lead you in a direction. But the first gig would have been Tina Turner.
That's amazing. I had some friends years ago that saw her at the Royal Gorge in Colorado, and they
Yeah,
all they talked about was the helicopter kind of came in and she kind of
yeah,
scaled down onto the stage, and they just talked about how her legs were the best looking
yeah.
legs they've ever seen in their entire
But
lives.
she was tiny.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But she went, and it was at the time that Mad Max was out, the first, and she was singing,
oh,
You don't need another hero." And she went
yeah.
upon this riser, and I shook hands with her. I was at the front.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a massive fan necessarily of Tina Turner at the time. I can't remember how it happened that I went to see, because I'm not actually a big concert goer. I
Yeah.
don't tend to go to big concerts very often. I've been to a few sort of people who've got guest lists. I've seen Michael Jackson and Whitney and that, just because I've known people, but I've never really been a big. My sisters are much more into that than I am. But we went to see her in Birmingham, and on the way back, I was just moved by it,
Yeah.
and I thought, you know what, it is possible to do music, but it was a very different landscape those days. It wasn't
Yeah.
considered. Now, I mean, there are schools that help you do it.
Yeah.
Those days, there wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. There wasn't a career path.
Yeah.
You just had to do it. And when people ask me now, Rachel, can you help me be a singer? I'm like, not really. You just need to go, and you need to do it. But people now, they don't want that. They want to earn money straight away. And it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. Not
Yeah.
properly, not proper musicianship. No, you have to do it for nothing. And it's it's art, isn't it? For hunger.
Yeah.
That's the old truth.
Well, I mean, I even think
That's it.
about like massive acts like the Beatles or U2. I mean, they had like a decade before they ever got to a point where they were
Mhm.
ready to make it and
I
do it
think
big time.
that's it. And people like Prince, who are and people like JK and Jamiroquai and Amy Winehouse, and people that, you know, are world famous. The thing with these guys is they'd be doing it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean. And David Lee Roth, they'd be the great rock bands, Bon Jovi. You know, I was really into UFO and Rainbow and Sammy Hagar and all those great American rock, Foreigner, Chicago, great, incredible singers. And that's my taste. Has always been very wide. It's not jazz. I've always just loved pop and rock and everything. And
Yeah.
all those great American songwriters and singers, Michael McDonald, all those guys, they'd be doing it anyway.
Yeah.
They'd be
You're
doing
right.
it in bars and clubs.
Yep.
Regardless, they just happen to be doing it on world stages because the industry, there's a level of success you can reach in music that will put you in those places. But those guys, they'd be playing anyway.
Oh yeah.
And people like Taylor Hawkins and Dave Grohl and these guys, the 606 Club that I play at here, the night before they did the Taylor Hawkins tribute in Wembley Arena, they were all in the 606 Club listening to jazz.
Wow. Wow.
Dave Grohl he was there with Justin Hawkins and the guys, you know,
Yeah.
they're music lovers.
Yeah.
And when you hear them play and you see interviews with these guys, especially like the people like the Foo Fighters, who I love all that stuff, Taylor Hawkins studied the drummers, the great jazz drummers, as much as he studied all the pop drummers.
Yeah.
And even the great hip hop guys, Jay-Z and the really great hip hop, Dr. Dre, they go right into music. They're not just fluffing around, they're serious.
Yeah, I totally get it. So the one thing about being an artist is that you learn a lot about yourself over the time. So when you take and look at the beginning of your career to right now and how you evolved, what's been the most revelatory things that you've learned about yourself as a person and as an artist?
Resilience.
Yeah.
Adaptability. And not getting distracted by trends.
Yeah.
Especially in jazz, because jazz comes and goes out of fashion, and the music industry, the music world, the music business reinvents a version of what they want to now call jazz, whether it was Sade, whether it was Jamiroquai. Now they're talking about other things, and you think you know what the real thing is, and you have that tenacity to just keep doing it and not try and follow the fashion.
Yeah.
But I think resilience and adaptability, you have to be adaptable. Like during COVID was a clear example. And not be arrogant about it and think, I'm an artist, I can't do anything else, because doing other things will only make you a better artist.
Yeah.
And the great artists in this world have done lots of things. It's not just, head down, noodling away. The more you do in life, the more you have to. And I'm not a great believer of thinking, oh, I have to give a message. I don't do music from a political stance or anything like that. But I think in relation to communicating with people, the more depth you have as a person, the more those people will connect with you, because something will resonate, whether it's just the way you sing something or a phrase, or, it's important to do that. I think it's life, isn't it?
Yeah. Certainly is. So, Rachel, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I am 100% a singer. That's it. No matter whatever else happens in my life, and all this adaptability I've talked about, I'm a singer, and I sing. If I'm not getting paid for it, I sing around the house anyway. It's just it just happens. I don't even know how to do it. I don't teach because I don't know how to do it.
So let's say we get off this call, time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go anywhere in the history of time and see one musician, singer, band, one concert. Where are you going?
Oh, where am I going? Oh my God, that's a good question, because such a huge.
There's so much
thing, yeah. I think I'd probably enjoy being at a really early Rolling Stones gig.
Yeah.
In the when it was really gritty, a really dirty sort of low down blues.
Yeah.
And I think I really wish I'd gone to New Orleans, because, of course, since Katrina and everything, it's all changed so much. And I would love to have perhaps gone back to New Orleans and before it changed, before the world made it, before the internet, before all that. probably, I think I would just love to have gone down there and been down to Bourbon Street and gone into those clubs that were really the real birth of music that we do.
Preservation Hall, that whole thing.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And see people like Fats Waller and, you know, the old guys doing their thing, whoever they were,
So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of the game, catch you live, you said you're going to be getting back after it. Any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
I would say if you're in London, come to see us at the 606 Club.
Okay.
On March the 20th. Look out for us hopefully at Ronnie Scott's later in the year.
Okay.
Obviously Ronnie Scott's is great, but I think the 606 Club is the place to go for everybody if you want authentic jazz. It's a bit less commercial.
Yeah.
It's a gritty, proper place, and it's my home club, I'd say. Yeah.
I dig it. Rachel, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story.
Lovely to talk. What a lovely interview. A really great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Hello, friends. Joe Domino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedomino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.